Welcome to Center of Light. How we doing this evening, everyone? I'm your host, Keith Anthony Blanchard, Yanava. It's Wednesday night, spread the light, strapping all my brother and sister astronauts as we launch for inner space. Things are moving. Dear Lord, things are moving. I know you feel it. And if you claim you don't feel it, you're in denial or you're just really not tuned. Things are moving with me. Things are moving with a lot of people, and I have no doubt things are moving with my guest tonight, Dr. Rita Louise, one of my favorite humans on this planet. Why do humans do the things we do? I think I need to ask her only one question. That should be the lead-in question. Why do we do the things we do? After she answers it, we could sign off. It is always a fun time when I get to hang out with my friend. Welcome to Center of Light. It's Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Central Time. I am here. I have lots happening for myself. In the book publishing arena, I want to say thank you to Gavin Lee Davies, Sixth Books, as well as John Hunt Publishing. All my, quote, fans, fanatics, fanaticism. We're all fanatics. We like good stuff. We like good, juicy stuff. It brings us back home, brings us back center, especially when you find people around you who are in full support of what you are and what you are doing, and they will go out of their way to give you gas money to get there. How ridiculous is that? That's what I'm into. I'm getting on the train. I'm on the train. In fact, I'm in the back in the caboose pulling people up saying, please join me on this ride. It's going to be really, really good. Tonight, my guest is Dr. Rita Louise, and again, we're going to be talking about humans. Why do we do the things we do? I have an excuse that makes me kind of get away with it a little bit, which is I enjoy being human. I enjoy playing in the arena of the human meat suit. It's just a lot of fun. We've been sitting on God's lap for eternity. It got old. It got infinitely, no pun intended. So we come down here on earth to be knuckleheads for a little while until we get our groove on. Are you getting your groove on? I am. I'm wanting to go back home. I'm homesick, so to speak. If you would, please take the time to share this to you all. You will find in this forum a group of links. One of those is to my YouTube channel. Please subscribe to my channel. Give me a couple of thumbs up on some of my archived interviews, especially with Dr. Rita I've interviewed in the past. Leave me some comments about future guests you would like to see. It helps me to refine the process to bring more of what you're wanting. And it costs you squat. It costs you knit. Cost you zip, cost you nothing to be illuminated along with these people who are walking the talk and living it and bringing such fine, high vibrational information to you and light. That's pretty cool, isn't it? The internet is cool. Facebook is cool. People have a grudge against Mark Zuckerberg, all the while they're posting on Facebook how much they hate Facebook. Kind of funny in it. We're going to take a short commercial break. Going to be right back with my guest, Dr. Rita Louise. Also, heads up for those in the Memphis area. And if you are not, get in your car. Nothing like a good road trip with a couple of friends. Come to Memphis, Tennessee. I think this is going to happen in September 21st and 22nd. Metaphysical Fair. It's going to be huge. Huge. Really huge. Because this guy's going to be in it. I'm going to have a booth. I'm going to do a keynote speaking. I'm going to have a slot. I think it's going to be on Saturday. I think it's going to be noon. I got plugged right into the system. You rub elbows with the right people and you be kind to people. They reciprocate. And I'm also going to be on Sunday night on the board. I think it's going to be public, of metaphysicians talking about whatever being on the board talks about. My name is Yanava. Welcome to Center of Light Radio. Going to be right back after commercial break. Let's see what we're going to play. I think tonight is a breathe kind of night. My spiritual being Lavender Soul comprises of Memphis Symphony Orchestras. The Memphis Symphony Orchestra players, some of them. And if you're interested in this beautiful music, contact me. I'll make sure I put some in the end. It's going to be right back with Center of Light Radio interview with Dr. Rita Louise. Humans, why do we do the things we do? Who knows? She does. That's why she's the expert in here tonight. See you shortly.
trust that I will guide you in whatever you do. Just remember to breathe and do your very best to live in love, give in love, be in love, and love you shall receive.
Welcome to Center of Light Radio as the ground shakes beneath me because I live in an industrial area right by trains and work trucks and service trucks. And late at night, it's actually quite beautiful until you're recording. Late at night, you hear them drop this train car with this ground shaking. And it's very distant, so it's sort of haunting, and so it's kind of cool. We're going to get down to Center of Light Radio business tonight. My guest is Miss Dr. Rita Louise, a dear friend of mine. She's smart. She dabbles in lots of fields. That dabble is a very loose word. She's very well learned. She gets into rabbit holes. She'll tell you about the rabbit holes. When you get in there, your intuition starts to kick in. Then you start knowing stuff beyond just the digging in the rabbit holes. Things start to make sense. You start seeing patterns on levels you've never seen before. Tonight's interview is Humans, Why We Do the Things We Do. Best-selling author Dr. Rita Louise is the founder of the Institute of Applied Energetics. Let me make sure my mic is on. It is. Sometimes I goof up. Applied Energetics and the host of Just Energy Radio. She is a neuropathic physician, a 20-year veteran in the human potential field. Her unique gift as a medical, intuitive, and clairvoyant illuminates and enlivens her work. She is the author of the books Stepping Out of Eden. This is her latest book. I absolutely love the cover. I watched the whole thing unfold, not only the cover, but the inception of the ideas, and she sent me some, and I promised her I was going to give her, and I didn't because I have a bunch of excuses I can give her, and she's not going to allow me to slip away with any of them, and I love her for that. Stepping Out of Eden. E.T. Chronicles. What myth and legend have to say about human origin? I love the title of this one. Avoiding the Cosmic 2x4. Dark Angels. An Insider's Guide to Ghosts, Spirit and Attached Entities, and the Power Within. She has produced a number of feature-length videos as well as short videos. Their titles include iKon, I Saw It and I Loved It, Deconstructing the Archetypes of the Ancients, Holy Deception, Ancient Aliens, Genetic Engineering, and the Rise of Civilization. My God, these titles are so huge. That's a lot of shoes to fill. The Truth About Nephilim Giants, Deceit, Lies and Deception, the Reptilian Agenda. It goes on and on and on, and she's funny to boot, and I love it. There is no better gig in town than Dr. Rita Louise, and you can find more about this beautiful powerhouse of energy at www.soulhealer.com. Again, that's www.soulhealer.com. Welcome to Center of Light Radio, my friend.
Hi, hey, hey.
What's up, boo? Can I call you boo? What's up, boo?
You can. I'm just loving being here, hanging out with you. Come on, what better gig could you do than like spending time with my bud?
So the question I want to put to you right off the bat, we should savor it, and we don't have to divulge all of it. Let's throw out a teaser. How's that? Humans. These creatures that we are, these intelligent creatures.
You can ask, the question that you were going to ask first, because I have a funny, very short answer.
All right, what was that question I was going to ask? Yeah, what was it?
Why do we do the things we do?
Why do we do the things we do?
Because we're stupid.
See, I love it. I love your fire. I love your quick out of the holster. I love your quick pistol, because most people say, well, that's not cool. That's so negative affirming. I'm like, man, get over yourself. Right? Because we're stupid. And spiritual teachers will tell you, they will use that word, you're a fool, you're stupid. So what makes us so stupid? What is stupid?
So, as you know, one of my things is really looking at the mythic record and using that as like our history book as to who we are and where we came from. And so when you look at the mythic record, one of the things that seems very clear, when you talk about humanity, and I mean, there's a huge rabbit hole, but, this is just kind of on the surface. Why we do the things we do is because we were taught everything. The gods gave us fire. The gods taught us agriculture. The gods taught us how to do metallurgy. The gods taught us how to navigate the stars in the sky. And so when you look at the mythic record, it never says, Fred last week discovered fire, or Aunt Sally learned how to weave. There's not ever one mention of anybody coming up with anything. Everything is given to us by the gods, and we are taught everything. And so it makes you go, okay, so if that's the case, if you accept the mythic record as having a grain of truth to it, and since every culture on the planet identifies the gods as being the teachers of humanity, then it says that we didn't know anything and everything was taught to us. And so bottom line, we're just these programmed people that live here, and we didn't come up with any of it ourselves, which is just a huge rabbit hole right there.
I love what Sadhguru, Earthly Saint, says. He says, all thinking is a regurgitation or diarrhea of past ideas. Everything that you can possibly think right now has been shoved into you or accepted by yourself. It's part of a cesspool of just nonsensical thinking. So you had mentioned, Dr. Rita, you had mentioned the gods. Now we have people who may come to this page or to this forum and hear those words, the gods. What are the gods? Though everyone knows about God, that's not what we're talking about. Please don't take it out of context. The gods could be a grandmother full of wisdom. It could be an ancient culture. It could be deities such as Jesus, Buddha. What do you mean by the gods? How inclusive is that?
So, well, actually, in the book, I talk about a number of different concepts about God. So the mythic record tends to suggest that the gods were living, breathing beings, that they came from the sky, that they spent time on Earth and trained humanity. So that's one aspect of God that comes very specifically from the mythic record. However, and this is a conversation that I would really love to have with you because I think it is so up your alley. There is this whole concept of God as this non-corporeal spiritual being that people utilize the ritual experience in order to have communion with. And it is like people will sit there and say, well, the gods can be multidimensional, et cetera, but it doesn't explain the stories in the mythic record. It doesn't explain how our DNA could be genetically engineered by a non-corporeal being, as is portrayed in myth. But that whole concept of having communion with this spiritual being is part of every culture as well. And so you end up with a little bit of a dichotomy of, is God a corporeal being? And so are we talking about this group of living, breathing beings that came to the earth and interacted with humanity, and then a separate group of higher spiritual beings that we communed with through the ritual experience, such as meditation or whatever, that we learned information from? Because people have their aha moments and their eureka moments when they are in, the ecstatic state. And that concept was foundational to every culture on the planet.
I totally get the non-corporeal idea, because if we are that already, then why do we need a deity or a guru? Well, we don't, but we do. It's because, for me, I've learned, Dr. Rita, is that when a person humbles themselves, be it through Jesus being the target, the avatar, the teacher, and the humility and the disposition and the gesture of genuflect and bowing down creates an opening, so that it's kind of a shake hands deal from the higher and the lower. I have my teachers. You're a teacher of mine. So, and so are these deities and these different archetypes that I use as it truly is. And I think this is where you were going with. It's just an excuse that we use to tap into the doorway to our own higher nature. That would be correct for you?
And that's where it gets confusing, and so
Yeah, right.
I'm going to use Graham Hancock as an example because I'm going to assume that your listeners have heard of Graham Hancock, and he's written a book and has done a lot of time, spent a lot of time taking ayahuasca and, going into a DMT inspired state where he claims he's interacted with the gods, and again, that tradition, of either using a hallucinogenic drug or using ritual as far as, and when I'm saying ritual, think Native Americans going dancing around the fire, or you see like in Africa, they're dancing and they're playing the drums and they're singing and chanting, which creates an energy and a vibration where certain members of the community would reach that higher state. Some without drugs because they were fasting and, going through this whole ritual purification. And then other people where they are actually using some kind of a hallucinogenic, altering substance to support achieving that state. And we find both used randomly around.
Amazing you say that. Day before yesterday, I'm going through the Facebook feed, and I see a post of course, I don't care what the post is visually, but what I read was something about, have we forgotten our heritage, our ancestry? And they're in Africa. They're in Africa, and they're doing exactly what you said. They're dancing themselves in such a way into this place of ecstasy. And the guy, in fact, listening audience, I will post this in this feed before this show is over. This guy is dancing, and he sits in a pit of fire. He is in such a high vibrational state, and he doesn't just sit in it. He sits in it. He dwells in it at least 2 minutes. He doesn't ignite. He doesn't jump. He doesn't move. His clothes nor his hair ignites. None of it. And he's sitting in it. So these states of consciousness and bliss and ecstasy, I think this is what everyone in the universe is seeking who is at least not yet illumined. From the chat room, Michelle Stout asked the question, where do these mythical records come from, Dr. Rita?
I mean, they are stories that have been handed down from generation to generation. There is the belief in the Western world, and I'm going to underscore that, in the Western world, that says that they are flights of fantasy or they're archetypes for, parts of our being. But there are archaeologists and geologists that are looking at indigenous records. There's a story that comes out of Australia and a story that comes out of British Columbia, so in Canada, where there are stories of different things that are going on. And, people are like, yeah, that's just some old story that doesn't have any truth. But when they have gone and done archaeological excavations, what they have found is that the stories that the people have carried on have been true. And so in the case of Australia, the story has been identified as it being at least 10,000 years old. In the case of British Columbia, the archaeological find, so what they said was that there was inhabitants on this certain island many, many, many years ago. And scientists were like, no, can't happen. It freezes over. And so when they were doing excavations, they actually found fire pits. And the fire pits dated to 14,000 years ago, which says that the story has been carried on and passed down generation to generation for 14,000 and 10,000 years, respectively. So that's at least minimal dating on some of these stories.
So I'm going to ask you the question, which you don't want to hear, because I don't want to hear such questions when I'm being interviewed. But I got to ask it for those.
Yeah, but I'll like saying the
yeah, but this is going to be the question you didn't really want to hear. All right, 14,000 years ago, you're talking about fire pits and raising energy and spirituality. And there are certain books on the planet right now that does not hold to the idea that, I mean, all that whole thing. How do you respond, in short, or however long you choose, to such, honest word, ignorant ideas? Someone who says that, but that does not align with my doctrine and my scripture. How do you, as a scholar, but you are a researcher in truth, how do you respond to that?
Not in a very kind way.
Right.
So, I mean, what I say is that, and I'm just going to be blunt because that's how I am. That's how I fly.
I love it.
Is that there's more than one book on the planet. And if you step outside of that book, what you find are all of these stories that talk about multiple gods. And when you start comparing the narratives, I mean, one of my big soapbox items when I bring material forward is that I have to find it in multiple cultures. So if I find it in Mesopotamia, and I find it in Australia, and I find it in the Americas, that tells me ding, 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 I've hit the mother lode. And, because we have geographic distribution, and it tells me that the story is going way, way deep into antiquity, just based on distribution of people and populations going around the world. And so when you start looking at stories that come from all of these different cultures, what you find, and I talk about that not in the Stepping Out of Eden book, which we're talking about today, but the book before that, E.T. Chronicles. It was also released as Man-Made, the Chronicles of Our Extraterrestrial Gods. And I'm moving my head so you can see the picture on the wall.
Do that again, please.
Well, I'm trying to figure out how to move my head.
Well, I didn't really want to see the picture. I just wanted to see you do that again. No, seriously.
You're messing up my hair.
Right.
And so one of the things that I uncovered was that there really is a global narrative, and that culture after culture after culture, even though the details are different, talk about very key points. And so, and just to kind of throw out some points, they talk about the concept of a golden age. They talk about the placement of the sun, moon, and stars in the sky. They talk about the flood narrative. They have a story about giving of fire to humanity. And so if you take these core concepts and line them up with the narrative, what you find is that the story before the narrative and the story before and after the key point are remarkably similar. And then it might diverge off a little bit, but they're the same. And so that's really how I look at things. And when you look at the biblical stories from Genesis 1 through the flood, that is very consistent with the stories that you find around the world. And so it's not that the Bible is telling a different story. It's just telling a much more abbreviated version of the story, because you can't have stories of Zeus fighting Kronos in this battle for eternity and control over the earth. There's only one God.
Right.
So they have to just delete it.
That was very well explained. I love the last part of it for those who might be a little more fundamental. That, Christianity is not telling a different story. It's just a very much abbreviated version of everything. And I love the idea that you look, if it's in Australia and it's in South Africa and it's in Peru and it's in all these places, then it's universal, because the Creator is everywhere and it serves all of humanity. It does not serve one particular sect, code, creed, or walk, talk. It's not prejudice and it's not bias and it doesn't favor anything. It is so beyond all these simple ideas.
Well, one of the things that I was looking at, because in this book, Stepping Out of Eden, my focus, so E.T. Chronicles / Man-Made, was really looking at our story. Where did we come from? What was the history of the planet? And I wasn't really sure what I was going to find when I started it, and what it is what it is. But it really didn't talk about humankind. I mean, it talked about the, formation of humanity, but just in a very brief manner. And I really wanted to put my focus on where we came from, not just from an evolutionary point of view, which is what everybody will talk about, but from a cultural point of view, because we're not just bodies. I mean, we have culture. We have a system of laws, we have rituals, we have language, we have art. I mean, there's so much to us that most people, they look at one little piece or another little piece, but they don't look at this concept from a global perspective. And again, you find that many of the core values, the core beliefs, the core rituals that you find in Christianity are shared. See, there's my train, are shared around the world. The concept of baptism, the concept of marriage, the concept of circumcision. I mean, you think that these things are, I don't want to say Christian, but, I mean, I personally thought that circumcision was a ritual that was Judeo-Christian, period. I didn't have any knowledge that it existed outside in any other culture, because it was the covenant between God and man. And
I didn't know that either. You just taught me something. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, it was just kind of a very fascinating concept that was the case. And researchers speculate that every culture at one point in time did do circumcision, and that it, in some cultures, fell by the wayside, or it was stopped as a way of differentiating one cultural group from another. So it's just, and so this book is just filled with, all of these concepts. I mean, because circumcision, along with any other kind of body modifications, were always tied to ritual, and there was so much energy tied to observance of ritual, of paying attention to what's going on in the world around you, looking at and being one with nature, that we totally don't get. But it's part of who we are, but it's also part of something that we're putting off to the side and not really owning anymore, while we get our new 5G cell phones to have.
What do you, we're at the bottom of the hour, what do you say that when we come back? How about we talk about where we come from? Let's, if you're interested in the idea, from the celestial down to the galactic, down to the planetary, down to the culture. So we can maybe have a little deeper understanding of what this is.
Okay.
Why we do the things we do.
Okay.
Everyone, Yanava here, Center of Light Radio. My guest tonight is Dr. Rita Louise, and we're talking about humans, why we do the things we do. We're going to be right back. Stick around. You have a choice. Remember, everything you do, conscious or not, you have a choice. You are invested. This is not a dress rehearsal. Stick around.
My world is dry, oh so dry. In the summertime I won't have no water. Oh, the wait, it's a little bit harder to take. contemplate a billion stars, leaving my hands to fate. That's all I've got, all I've got. In the summertime, I won't have no water. Oh, wait, it's a little bit harder to leaving my hands to fade. All up to fade. I wonder why. Ooh, I wonder why. Time for a change. Time for a change. Time for a change.
Welcome back to Center of Light Radio. Yanava here with my guest, Dr. Rita Louise, and we are talking about humans, us creatures. Dr. Rita, you must be in front of a window with the moon because your skin is turning moonlight. You're getting darker. Oh my God, this is supposed to be Center of Light. We're talking about humans. Why do we do the crazy shit we do? Before the break, we talked about the idea of moving into more of where we come from. We can say that, let's get rid of the celestial. We know that we come from God. That's easy. You and I both like playing in the arena of the galactic. So let's talk a little bit about that. In my work, The Divine Principle, it talks about how we are comprised. People in fundamental religion, they never really look at the broader picture. They just say, we were created, we were put on earth, and we created out of the mud and the clay and the dust and all that. But when you start looking at things like DNA code, we're getting into the microscope and the magnifying glass and look at the mechanics of what this all is on a physical nature. My work, it talks about how we are part of the code structure of 7-ish, give or take, different races that in our RNA DNA structure, that this was agreed in contract with higher ups, the hierarchy, all the way down to the creation of the human being. What are your thoughts about how we might be spawned or birthed from higher intelligence? Let's use that word.
Okay. So, I mean, one of the things that I contend that, I have received hate mail on is that this planet was terraformed. because the extraterrestrials that have come to this planet were unable to live on the Earth. I mean, you have to be specifically designed to be able to be on a class M planet with the proper gravity, with the proper amount of oxygen and nice nitrogen concentrate. And so, a race had to be engineered to be on this planet. And so it took time. And, my feeling is that, we see these annihilation events that occur throughout history, our real early history. And one of the things that you find is that we have an annihilation event, and then the life that comes back is on a grandiose scale at a higher level. And so, as we come in forward in time, I mean, yeah, we do share a lot of genetic information with chimpanzees and frogs and fish, and reptiles, because there is a connection, because, those were building blocks upon which newer and better things were designed. And I'm going to go back to the biblical story. It says that we were created out of the dust of the earth, and that concept of us being created out of mud and or being created out of genetic material. So in Genesis 2, we have Eve being created out of the rib of Adam, so out of genetic material, are the two stories that you find around the world, period. That's it. There's only two narratives. It's either clay or mud or genetic material. Sometimes you find both of them in the story, like in the Sumerian story, they talk about a clay pot being used, and then the gods took their sperm, and then all of the gods spit into the clay pot, and then that mixture was used to create humanity. There are a number of narratives that have come forward that there were multiple attempts made in order to create the perfect man. And I don't know if you're familiar in, I guess it's Tahiti, there's the tiki figure, and it's that guy that's just kind of like all crooked. And that is supposed to be the representation of the first man, except he's deformed. But that fits the mythic narrative that there were issues with the first man.
Well, talking about Genesis,
Okay.
when it was spoken that go out and replenish the earth, emphasis on why not just go out and plenish the earth? What is this replenish business? And you are getting darker by the moment. I can only see.
Okay,
those
you know what?
cheeks.
Give me 1 second. I'm going to put. I have some overhead lights, but they have a
Do
very
your
yellow
thing, darling.
cash.
Do your thing. Tonight, my guest is Dr. Rita Louise, and whenever her and I get together, firecrackers go off. No telling where this conversation is going to go. She is just a love boatload of fun.
And I did mean to turn them on, but I forgot.
We were just talking bad about you. I'm sorry.
Okay, thanks.
So we're talking about the beginnings of at least Genesis, about and other things about how were brought about. People think God, snapped his finger.
But actually, I want to answer your very specific question about go be out and repopulate.
Right.
Myths suggest that we weren't the first race on the earth. That there. So according to, and I'm going to use Greek cosmology because people understand that. And so there is a battle that happened between Uranus, who was Kronos' father, who was Zeus's grandfather, and Kronos. And so when Kronos castrated his father with the adamantium sickle, the blood of the castrated Kronos fell on the earth. And from that, a race of giants was born. And so you find stories of giants being on the earth everywhere. I mean, it's not just one culture. It's, again, part of that global narrative. And so my belief is that there was a race of giants on the earth prior to the formation of humanity. And so there's a story that's called the Gigantomania in Greek cosmology. This one is one of the stories that you don't find a whole lot of references to other than one or two cultures. And so that's a little concerning to me. But it's a story that talks about a war between the giants who thought they were the sons and daughters of gods and of the gods, and they felt like they should have better rights and they should have more control. And so there was a war that happened between the giants and the gods, and the giants
Dr. Rita,
lost.
what gods? What gods? We don't have to get deep in that, but just off the cuff, what gods are we referring to?
This is a very Greek story. So
Greek,
it would
Greek,
be
gotcha,
the sky.
gotcha,
It
gotcha,
would be
gotcha.
the sky gods. It would
Sky
be
gods.
Zeus and his whole group, and but the giants lose. And so as the timeline progresses, it was decided to create humanity to do these labors after the giants lost the wall. That was one of the concessions, was that a race of humans would be created. And so my feeling is that there were giants that walked the earth in those days. I mean, that's line that comes out of Genesis, where it talks about the Nephilim. The Nephilim means giants, and so, and this, the line says, in those days, the Nephilim walked the earth. And, I just say, okay, but that's a true statement, because in those days, the giants walked the earth. And so I think that there was a race of giants. I think they suffered a huge defeat, and their numbers were very limited, and humanity came in and kind of took over their place. And then, we got rid of the rest of them.
We've all seen the evidence, be it on social media. There's a lot of fake crap out there. I'm not talking about the knuckleheads who are just trying to ride the truth train, but we've seen the footprints in stone. We've seen the archaeological digs with the bones. We know it's there. In fact, the hardest people, take this correctly, never take Keith out of context, the hardest people to convince would be the fundamentalists. So if it says it in that book and everyone believes it, it's got to be true across the board, because many other people are just so easy to convince. Because once you, like Dr. Rita and I, like I talked earlier, Dr. Rita and I, when we start doing these researches and these internal excavations, and see, like, she's like me. When we go into the hole, we bring a golden shovel. So when the hole stops, we dig a little further. Would that describe you? Right?
That would be about right. But, I try to stay on the rim of the hole, and I just send down buckets. I send my guys down there, here, go find some more stuff and bring it up for me, and I'll just write it down. I mean, there are so many rabbit holes that you could just jump into, and it is just such a strange dichotomy, because there's what you research, and it's like, okay, is it really true? I mean, I always have this little skeptical piece of, is it really true? But there is just so much evidence to support it, but it's just not mainstream. And so there's not a whole lot of validation that says, hey, she knows what she's talking about.
I just saw a message from the forum here from Michelle Stout. She says, Dr. Rita, before you answer, I'd like to give it a shot. She says, Dr. Rita, what is your view on the universe of nothingness? That would be Shiva, the Lord Shiva. Nothingness. There's nothing in there. That's where all things are birthed. But that, she says that, is that in this place of nothingness, I'm just going to let you answer that. She asked the question, what is your view on the universe of nothingness?
So again, another universal concept. This is the way that I read a long time ago, and it really resonated with me. And so as far as the universe is concerned, we have a positive and negative thing going on. And so, if you think of a sine wave, where if it's up at the peak of the sine wave, we're in a positive universe like we are now. And when you get down to the bottom of the sine wave, you're in a negative universe. And as it starts moving up, that's where you have things like the Big Bang event, where it moves from being in a negative universe, so a nothingness universe as far as nothingness physical, but into a very energetic place, or maybe a different dimensional place, into what we see as 3D reality, even though obviously we both know there's more than just 3D reality. So
Wow,
that would be my,
there's some serious activity happening around you.
oh, this is normal.
That's normal.
Planes, train. Well, I don't have planes, but yeah, I live on a major street, and yeah, it's pretty normal.
I would like to add to what you said as and also to answer Michelle's question. There is a universe. In fact, there is no universe other than that. And everything is an offshoot or a subfolder of the master computer, the dreamer.
Mm-hmm.
It's an imaginative universe. So as we sit here and postulate ideas, if we could think of a thought, it's already been thunk. We are just containers to bring in like thoughts. So if we imagine the possibility of a something, there is a parallel, a dimension, a universe for said something to exist, because where does such thoughts, ideas, principles, visions come from? Would you agree with that, Dr. Rita?
I'll say yes. I mean, it was a little like, um,
Meaning that if we are created in the image and likeness of God, we're created in the image. As we imagine, so things are. The very idea that we can imagine something to be real is a universe in and of itself.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, I mean, people get really stuck with the physical world and think that this is it. And, they're kind of coming around to the notion of, there might be ghosts that live. Well, I'm not quite sure where some people think they live, but obviously they don't live in this dimension. They live in a higher dimension that, I always like to use Star Trek visualizations. There would be the shows where Captain Kirk would take something, and now everybody on the Enterprise is like not really moving. And he's just like buzzing around regular speed, and it's because he's in a different time space continuum. I like solo Star Trek. But really he's in a different dimension, and so they can't see him, because they're moving really slowly and he's not. And so we have to sit there and think about, okay, there's our dimension and what we can see and experience. I mean, for example, like sound. There's sound frequencies that we can hear, but you can get a dog whistle and blow it and not hear anything, but your dog can hear it because it can hear different frequencies. And so, there's the ghostly plane level, but then there are levels of existence that vibrate much higher than that. And from our ability, I mean, other than people going, oh, well, it's the 12th dimension of existence, that's a rabbit hole I choose not to even venture in. But I do know that there are multiple levels of existence, multiple frequencies of existence that are around us, and we're able to tap into if we look there and can allow ourselves to bring in that vibration and learn the language, the vocabulary of that vibration.
We talked about the source of where we come from. We got into the galactic, the extraterrestrial, and a few other ideas. Tonight's presentation or interview is humans, why we do the things we do. And I asked that question of you, Dr. Reader, at the very beginning of the show, says, because we're stupid. And I totally get it. So that being said, does that stupid aspect of ourselves come into play when we get down to the culture of where we come from?
Well, this
is that when it begins
thought.
to seat itself and make itself comfortable?
Well, it's interesting. I think that humans, I mean, I do believe that there was a certain level of genetic engineering that was done specifically to give us the ability to have bigger brains and to be able to speak, to have opposable thumbs, to walk upright. There were just very specific things that were done. But with that said, it's like we're a trained species. We are a domesticated, trained species. So we can teach our dog, like sit, and our dog will sit. And, there are the sign language apes. That's a great example. There was one that had over like 3,000 words that it knew and could communicate quite well with humans, but it was trained. And, once our training many thousands of years ago started, it became self-perpetuating because now we're teaching our children and it doesn't require the gods to teach us anymore. But my feeling is that we have gotten to a place that because of this education, I mean, we can't undo it. We're not ever going to undo it. And so how do we take it to the next level? How do we transcend to getting to a higher place of reality? And my feeling is that that would occur by really working with the ritual state, by working with the ecstatic state, meditation, being clear, being open, being true to yourself. But I feel like that is being squashed by society now. They don't want us to be able to have our own inner wisdom, because I think, there was a story that said, and I think it was from the Americas, that they created humanity, but they realized they were too smart, so they had to dumb us down. But they knew that in time that we would learn how godlike we were. And so I feel like we are moving to that place that intellectually we have more self-determination, more self-will, more understanding of what's going on a cognitive level. But I feel like, the powers that be don't want us to take that step, that they want to keep us dumbed down, and I don't mean school-wise, but so that we're cut off from that inner experience that each of us can have unless we choose to bring that into our lives.
So we all just been Pavlovian.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Here, boy, fetch,
like,
fetch.
Pretty much. Yeah, get me a beer. No.
Right? Well, at least it has some perks.
Yeah.
Or a shot of tequila.
Yeah, any of the above. I mean, just if you think about it, it's like, where would language come from? There has to be an understanding amongst a group of people that if I say dog, it means that creature, and linguists have found that, I mean, there's not a ton, but there are a large body of words that translate the same around the world, like mama, or whatever. I mean, that even words that we use are the same, and so if we have this group in South Africa and they're talking about their mom, and we have this group in Russia or Australia, I mean, it really doesn't matter where they are, you would think that they would have different words, that the customs would be different. What's interesting is one of the most consistent cultural things that we find on the planet is the concept of marriage. Okay, so now you would think that marriage is something that was just an arbitrary decision that people would do, for keeping the bloodline moving or for inheritance, ideas, keeping the money in the family and that kind of thing. But the concept of marriage and the prohibition about adultery, I mean, there are all of these laws and things tied to marriage. But if marriage is something that humanity made up, if we just decided, we should get married, you would find that there would be different laws, there'd be different cultures and customs. You would find areas where there wasn't marriage, and you would find areas where there was marriage, and the things tied, I like to, but I'm back to my Star Trek, so we would have one group that were doing the human thing, and then in a different country, they would be doing the Klingon idea of marriage. And in another area, they'd be doing the Ferengi idea of marriage. But that's not what we find. We find that humans act human. You know, you could take a group of Star Trek people, and you could take a human and a Klingon and a Ferengi and a Vulcan, and I would say a Romulan, but you could kind of confuse them with the Vulcans, you know, and put them in a row. And, you know, if you know what they're like, regardless of who the person is, you can identify who is who just because they are that way, you know. And I always like to say it with my not very good Ferengi accent, you know, like, because humans act human. You know, that is our nature, is we're human. We're not Klingons. We're not Ferengi. And regardless of who you talk to on the planet, who you interact with, there is this base level of consensus that you find.
Dr. Rita, what do you see happening, even in your own interpretation? What do you foresee for humanity? What's going on with it? What is the dynamic that is occurring, and what could be a phenomenal disposition one could take to balance themselves, to stay planted when the ocean begins to really create some waves?
Well, you know, I think that this past, you know, and I'm not like a total astrology person, but, you know, we had, I think Chiron moved into a different planet, and I have seen for many, 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 many people that the veil of illusion has been ripped off, and they're being forced to process a lot of inner trauma, old trauma, stuff that they don't want to look at, stuff they don't want to deal with, stuff they don't want to, you know, they put it in that box in the back of the closet for a reason. And I feel like it is making people, forcing them to really look at themselves, look at their values, look at society. You know, there's all this stuff going on in the news and the fake news and the not fake news. And I mean, it's just crazy, but it's making people think about, is this real? Is this not real? And so I feel like we're kind of on this really big turning point, or potential turning point, you know, depending on how things keep moving forward. But I think for people individually, you know, they're looking for their truth. They're looking for their autonomy. They're looking to get their power back. You know, I feel like that's the energy dynamic we've moved to. And even though some of the stuff that people are being forced to go through isn't fun, I think that many people realize it's the steps they need to take to get to the other side, because they know it's going to be better on the other side.
Would you say that the dynamic that is happening in, I call it the Great Split. I don't imply a separation. I call it the Great Split. Let's call it a spade. It's what it is. There's energy is splitting. Would you say that we are at the place where we're going to take our power, or power is going to take you?
That's a great question. And people want their power, you know, and people are questioning authority. And I think that, and this is going to sound terrible, but I'm just going to, you know, say it. I feel like people would rather martyr themselves and be true to themselves at this point in time than to go under someone else's control, because they would rather keep their power and keep their autonomy than submit themselves to something that is not true to them.
Dr. Rita, we're at the end of the show. I'd like to ask you again, simply answer it the same way, or just with a little different flavor. Humans, why do we do the things we do?
Because as humans, we were taught, I would say starting about 1.5 million years ago, to do the things that we do. And over the course of the millennia, we have taken these basic concepts or things that were given to us by the gods over periods of time and developed it into what we actually see today. But the base of humanity is the same as it was hundreds of thousands of years ago.
So would you say the reason that we do the things we do, the reason we do them, is because back then, when it was needed, those things actually worked? So you keep passing this baton of this is what works, and things change and energy change. Would you say it's because of that's what worked, and that old world is now dead. It's buried.
I'm not even going to say that. I'm not going to say that because there were some things that we did that we cannot really come up with an answer for. So, for example, cranial deformation. Why did we sit there and inflict that on our children?
Right.
Tattooing. It's a form of identification. It's a form of having people in the community know that you're so far up in society. The parallel that I make to it in more modern times is like the Freemasons. They have their badges and pins, and you can look at someone in their regalia and know where they are within the organization. And at one point in time, that's what tattooing did. But who cares? And why did we do that? And so there are a number of things that were, and I'm going to use this word very specifically, were imposed upon, I can't even say it out loud, imposed upon society that doesn't make any sense, although it is a very consistent theme that we find around the world with very similar rules, ordinance, and taboos tied to it. And so that leads me to believe, there are things that worked for us, but then there were things that we would have to do so we don't have to suffer the wrath of the gods.
Thank you for being here. What a great time I had. I couldn't have thought of anything else I'd rather be doing tonight and talk to
Me
you.
Me either.
It's good to see you, dear. Any closing statement? And always, please leave your contact information so our listeners can find your movies, your books, and what you do ongoingly.
Sure. The best place for people to go is to my main website, which is soulhealer.com. See, I can't do it as good as you. But that's SOULHEALER.com, and you can get all of my books and CDs, videos there. They're all on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all those good places, but they're kind of a ripoff. And if you get them from me, they come signed, which is, really.
That's what you call mayonnaise on your sandwich.
That's right. It's priceless, babe. It's priceless.
Dr. Rita, thank you, dear. I love you.
Thank you. Love you too, babe.
Always welcome you. Everyone, Dr. Rita Louise, tonight we were talking about humans and why we do the things we do. We do lots of ridiculous stuff. We do. I get it. It's fun. I like having a shot of tequila on Friday night or maybe even on Monday if I really need/want one. Yanava here, Center of Light Radio, shortly at 9 o'clock Central Time, which is about 40-ish minutes from now. I'm going to be doing a presentation on Shiva. Gufa. I'm going into a cave for about a month and I ain't coming out. I'm going to have a conversation with Shiva into that nothingness where everything is possible. And I'm bringing a bunch of people with me. It's going to be a lot of fun. Keith Anthony Blanchard here, also known Yanava.